The fighting game esport can be broken down into a few sections. The tournament and sponsors. Tournament decides ruling, hosts the event, provides the venue, and has varying amounts of prestige. For example, it could be a local tournament at your local library, or it could be the biggest fighting game tournament of the year, EVO. Sponsors are what gives the tournaments money. It can range from ESPN, Capcom, or just anything that is willing to give money in exchange of freely advertising their products. The esport team and players. Esport teams act as sponsors, coaches for professional players, and have a certain amount of prestige depending on which one and in accordance to certain games. The players can range from new to local legends or professionals. Depending on the tournament, it will be streamed usually on Twitch or YouTube, and will have local or professional esports commentators. Now with a brief overview of fighting game esports, let's get into explaining how fighting games work. As the world of esports expands, as a spectator you have to know enough to understand what is happening on the screen. My goal today is to help a complete outsider understand the basics of the fighting game esport.
First, we will be going over what our buttons do. The fighting game I'll be showing for this is Skullgirls, Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and a few other ones. We will be talking about Magic series, which refers to how the basic combo structure works in fighting games.
You can go heavy, medium, light, depending on the character, or light, medium, heavy. In a game like Street Fighter, it is very character dependent, although most of the time you go somewhat like heavy, medium, light, which the majority of the characters in fighting games work like this. Light, medium, heavy will not work in Street Fighter 5. Although, if you're playing a game like Skullgirls, you could press literally any button sequence you want. You can go medium, heavy, light, literally anything you want. Links are important to understand, as it provides the absolute basic knowledge of what is possible within the game. Next, we'll be moving ahead towards movement in a game. Arguably, it is the most important thing to understand as a spectator or as a competitor, as it allows you to know what is possible during neutral, a term that we will go over later, and during combos. For an example, you can be chased down like you have hellhounds attached to you in Marvel vs. Capcom 3, or in Street Fighter 5, you can just dance around and be too scared to do absolutely anything until you get like a little voice just urging you, nagging you to approach or just to jump in randomly. Or you can have a mixture of both, as shown in Guilty Gear. Universal movement options within all fighting games involve walking, dashes on ground, whether they be short or long, and jumps. More genre specific would be air dashes, flying, runs, different jump angles, teleports, multiple air dashes, and glides. Now let's talk about the core concept of neutral. At its absolute basics, it's essentially the in-game mental argument you have with your opponent to try to hit them. Or to dumb it down extremely, it's like rock, paper, scissors. Basically, you do one option that you think is good, your opponent does the other option, you either cancel out, win or lose the situation. But in a fighting game, you're basically trying to block the enemy's hits while trying to push your advantage and hit them instead and slowly whittle them down until you win. So let's take Street Fighter for an example. Say you're Ryu and your opponent's Zangief. As Ryu, you want to space out Zangief because Zangief is known as a grappler. A grappler essentially wants to get in, grab you, and do a stupid amount of damage, then repeat the process until you're dead. Ryu is usually an all-around character, so it can be played any way you want. So as Ryu, you want to keep as much distance as possible between you and Zangief while poking him. So you're going to mainly be just punching him or like kicking him from far away, or you're gonna be shooting out a lot of Hadokens, which is your projectile. In this small interaction, multiple things could happen. The Zangief could block the Hadoken, he could jump in place, which completely avoids Hadoken, but doesn't really do much to help his situation. Or he could jump towards you when you Hadouken. So, say he's a little bit closer. With each jump, he'll get like a little bit closer if he chooses not to jump, and if he jumps correctly, he won't get hit by any Hadouken. But if he's close enough and he jumps in as you Hadouken, two things can happen. If he's too late, he will get hit by a shuriken from you. But if he jumps correctly and guesses your Hadouken, he could land and get a full combo, or worse, he could get a super off or a grab, which will make his neutral much more in an advantage for him. Street Fighter V neutral is very more calm compared to, say, team fighters like Skullgirls or Marvel vs. Capcom 3 or just anime fighters. Also, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 neutral is very hard to describe because it changes immensely depending on the skill level. It could look anything from very insane, high-paced, everything's happening on the screen, or just if you're really bad at the game and your friend is really bad, it could look like Street Fighter, honestly. A few other examples of neutral that looks different depending on the genre could be like Tekken, which is a part of the 3D arena fighter neutral. Tekken is way more reliant on punishes that are very read heavy, which allows you to get full combos. Marvel 3 kind of has like the same sense of just like having the statement in your head that just tells you that you're going to ascend to the greatest plane of mankind and they will worship you and call you a god. But if you get hit once, you just want to cry. Because two things are bound to happen. Well, three really. One, if you're fighting an experienced player, you're gonna cry because you can't do anything anymore. Because you're just gonna have to sit down and watch a movie called Zero May Cry. Or you get hit once and then you just reset to neutral because your opponent didn't recognize you got hit. There's also different types of neutral that are just generally based on skill level in any fighting game. I usually refer to these neutrals as monkey neutral, is when both players or just one of the players is really bad at the game, or they just straight up do not care for the consequences of their action within the game, which basically is just them pressing buttons at complete random with no real clear indication of them trying to beat you and understand your game pattern or plan. And sometimes it completely works in their favor because it catches you off guard. But if you figure out their game plan, it is very easy to counteract. Or skill-based neutral, which is both players have been playing the game for however long. They both know what their characters do and they both know your best options. So they have to slowly whittle at each other, finding out each other's game plans and having to form a response accordingly and adapt as the game goes by. Now, let's talk about more Marvel 3 specifics. I won't go too deep into Marvel because there is a lot that could happen in Marvel, all the way from movement to combos, but I'll show you enough to understand how deep the rabbit hole can go. One of the first things we have to learn in Marvel is a universal launcher combo, which is usually light, medium, heavy, special, medium, medium, heavy, special, or depending on the character like Dante, medium, medium, heavy, special, medium, medium, heavy, special. This is the absolute basic combo in Marvel 3 and is universal between almost all characters. I think there's like Shuma Garat can't do it. Now, on to movement. There's a lot of different ways to move in Marvel, but I'll show like the absolute basic grounded movement. Movement, you have walking, you have normal dashing, and you have wave dashing. But the fastest way to dash is called a plink dashing. First, I will explain wave dashing. You have to understand that dashes can be cancelled in this game. They could be cancelled with attacks, specials, supers, or just with crouches. Wave dashing abuses the system and causes an exploit where you just dash, crouch, dash, crouch. And if you do it fast enough, You could cancel the dash with a crouch with some sliding momentum that allows you to just go further than normal. And you can repeat this process backwards or forwards, and it does not matter. Plank dashing is extremely hard to do, however. Plank dashing requires something known as a kara cancel. Kara canceling is a thing shared between most fighting games, not all though, which essentially is canceling an attack into anything. So for plank dashing, we want to dash fast. We would have to do heavy, cancel it with a dash, and within the heavy window, there's like, on frame 1 of the heavy, between like 1 to 4, you could cancel it with a dash, but if you mess it up, you won't get the dash out. And this is important because plank dashing is a hard commitment move option, which it is the fastest option, but if you mess it up, you're going to get bodied for it. In conclusion, the pros of learning a fighting game is to be able to watch fighting games as a spectator sport, which is becoming a very heavy spectator sport, especially with how time goes on. You have to understand what's happening in fighting games to fully enjoy it, just like any sport. This also allows seeing it as an opportunity for business, spectating, competing, and gives you basic knowledge, which gives you credibility somewhat in that field. It definitely is not for everyone, but it definitely would not hurt to give it a try.